Welcome to MamaFuel, the podcast that fuels every mama's heart, soul, mind, and body, and hopefully sparks a few dreams along the way. I'm Ann Ferguson, Chief Nurturer and Mama Mentor at the Centered Mama Project, and your host for this podcast. I'll be sharing real, raw, and often funny conversations with beautiful mamas from around the world to remind you that you're not alone and that you're doing amazingly on this wild journey of shepherding small humans as they make their way on our beautiful planet. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of MamaFuel, the podcast. My name is Ann Ferguson, and I am your host, this podcast and all the podcasts. And this week, we have something really special. In fact, I think that this week's podcast guest is the person who has known me the longest of all, actually. Certainly of my podcast guests, and probably of definitely my friends too. Heather Dawson is an old friend, a mama of two beautiful boys at kind of opposite ends of the spectrum of ages. One is 3, if I'm not mistaken, and the other one's nearly 15.
You're off by a year, but yes, he's 4.5 and 15.
4.5 and 15, right? So close. And Heather lives back in Canada, which is where I grew up and we met at university. She is also an incredibly talented maker of exquisite beauty. She makes unbelievable clothing and just creations. The things that come out of her hands and sewing machine and embroidery machine and all the rest are incredible. She also is someone who is an amazing businesswoman, an entrepreneurial spirit, and a really kind and great friend whose life has brought all kinds of twists and turns from the very beginning, and she has navigated them with a grace and a calmness that is amazing and inspiring to someone who is perhaps not that calm, me. And I'm just really glad that you get to meet her voice. And if you go to the YouTube channel, you get to meet her beautiful face as well. Welcome, Heather, and thank you for being my guest.
Hello, Anne. Wish a long time no hug, but nice.
I know. We're down to single digit weeks now. At time of recording, we'll be hugging. In fact, this episode will be published right after I've seen you.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm getting ready for a long trip back down to Canada and the US, and we'll be visiting Heather, and I cannot wait. So let's, for everybody who doesn't know you, talk about your life right now. What does your life look like right now?
Oh, right now, I'm in an upside down turny time. I worked from home for 5 years and was luxuriating in that. And recently had an opportunity to change opportunities. So I switched over, and now I'm commuting on Monday mornings to Toronto for 3 days. Returning Wednesday nights, and I am financially managing and assistant managing a HarleyDavidson dealership, and a big dealership in an automotive group in Oakville, Ontario. And that's about 4 hours from my home.
Yeah. And so back at home, when you leave on Monday morning, you're leaving 2 boys.
Yeah, I leave 2 boys at home and my husband. And my 2 dogs, and apparently on the list for the 4.5-year-old, that's the little blue fish and the snail. So we have a house full of boys at home, and I leave my masculine house to come to a masculine environment selling motorcycles.
Yeah, selling Harleys, which my girls are fascinated with big motorcycles that make a lot of noise. So maybe we can come and see you at your dealership when we're in Toronto. That would be fun too, wouldn't it?
Fun too, it would be. I've been in the motorcycle industry since about 95, so I've had a long history of that with some twists and turns in between. But it's a normal environment for me.
Yeah. Well, for anyone who is not watching, I urge you to go to the YouTube channel because Heather is sitting in her showroom. It's really early in the morning, so there's nobody else there other than Heather and these really huge, awesome motorcycles behind her. It's a cool setting in which to be having this conversation, which is going to turn towards things very feminine and womanly and mothering. So another place that you've had a heck of a lot of twists and turns other than your career has been your journey to becoming a mom. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that looked like?
I had, early on in my teenage years, I thought I had it all together. I thought these womanly hips of mine were meant for bearing children. And I discovered early in my 20s that these womanly hips may be destined for children, but it wasn't going to be an easy trip. So I had many, many, many attempts and miscarriages. My 7th pregnancy was a success and bore me a 15-year-old boy.
Not at the beginning. He wasn't born 15.
He was still a big guy. He was a big guy, but he's now much, much bigger. So that was a big challenge. My first marriage didn't, in fact, endure all of the twists and turns of pregnancy. And I was a single mom for a long time. I had a relationship for a while with another man who had a daughter. So I had a stepdaughter for a little while. I had a couple of pregnancies with him that failed. And then my 17th pregnancy with my most recent husband, we like to joke and say, my 17th pregnancy resulted in another boy. So I have 2 boys. So it was a big mystery for a long time. We went through a lot of procedures and investigations to try and figure out what was going on with me. But it turned out that I had a genetic predisposition to miscarriage first, and second to some very strong cancer percentages. So I pursued the pregnancies. The last pregnancy was my happy accident. And it doubled to an extra happy accident because he had the gene that is the indicator. And when they investigated him, they found the gene, which involved a conversation with the parents and me getting tested. And we identified it in me and subsequently found that I had Cowden syndrome and had a very high risk of cancer. So I've had subsequent surgeries, and now here I am. Happily.
Resplendent and beaming and healthy and gorgeous. Is not, he wouldn't look at you and think, wow, you've had 15 miscarriages in total, which is, I mean, in an earlier podcast, in fact, at time of publishing, I think the last week's podcast will have been with Anna Saucier, who is a fertility care practitioner who also had a huge number of, not as many as you, but a lot of miscarriages and works in the fertility arena, helping women find different options to natural fertility care, and both those who want babies and those who have 6 and it's enough, you know. And having gone through that journey to then get to the place where you have, as you say, your happy accident, your little guy who is amazing and so healthy and gorgeous and growing like a weed, but that you had a couple of bumps with him, and the very fact that you went through this twist and turn of having him tested and having his genes mapped, I guess, or this specific gene map, which then meant that you had really good indicators of what may happen to you, has basically saved your life, really.
It absolutely saved my life. Yeah. The Cowden syndrome is a terminal diagnosis. It's not a terminal disease necessarily, but your body has no ability to throttle back its reaction to cancer, its tumors. So a lot of us go through life not even knowing we have little bits of cancer. And in a person with Cowden syndrome, you die from it. So that little tiny bit of cancer is a big concern. So the prognosis for me was there was a 5% chance I would live to 54.
Wow.
So very, very extreme risk for me in particular. It explained the miscarriages because my body was not permitting my little zygotes to grow. It solved a lot, actually took a lot of weight off my shoulders for why I was having the miscarriages. There was a silver lining in that diagnosis. So I had to mitigate my cancer risk. So I had quite a bit to do to mitigate my cancer risk. I had a double mastectomy. And it turned out it was pretty much just in time. So I had a double mastectomy and I had a reconstruction. I had the full kit and caboodle removed as far as hysterectomy goes. Luckily I got that second child in before the diagnosis. So it ended up being just worked out perfectly. But I had lost my mother to breast cancer and I had lost my stepmother to breast cancer. And my father had a a partner in between the two that had also died of cancer. So I had a really good perspective on the mortality of cancer, and it made decisions really easy. So again, I was really fortunate in the timing of everything.
And also having a little guy, because how old was Duncan when you were going through all of this process of finding out that you had Cowden's disease?
So he was about 6 months when his macrocephaly is an indicator of Cowden syndrome. So when his head started to grow, he was 6 months old, and so that was the date of the initial investigation. It was about a year until we had me diagnosed. So he was a year and a half. I had the double mastectomy when he was just about 3, I think, 2. And then I had the hysterectomy a year ago. So he was 3.5 when I had the hysterectomy. So all through that, there was a lot of teaching him how to climb on me instead of me picking him up, because I couldn't pick him up with a double mastectomy. There was teaching him how to get into the car seat on his own, teaching him how to... It worked out great. I have a little monkey of a 4.5-year-old who's very, very busy and very happy to do his own thing. So yeah, it was a lot to address in that time frame, but it all just worked out.
But from the outside, it certainly seemed like, as you say, I remember when you lost your mom, when Val died, that to me, as someone who had never experienced that kind of a loss anywhere around me, was such a reframer, even from a distance, being, your friend and your roommate, and knowing that your dad has had these subsequent losses, not just of Val, but of his 2 other partners. As you say, it seemed like, when you would talk about it, it sounded like, yeah, just gonna go eat a pizza. I'm just gonna go have a double mastectomy, and I'm just, there was that. From the outside and from a great distance, there wasn't a huge amount of emotional charge around it beyond, this is just what has to happen.
Yeah, I mean, when my mom passed away, there was a lot for me to deal with. She was sick for a number of years. I don't know if you remember when she first found the lump. I mean, I was in my 4th year of university, and I then dealt with it for a number of years. And I think I allowed, you have to, the death of a parent, this, the death of a parent affects you profoundly. Yeah. And as she was dying, we were addressing the perspective of death, right? And she kept saying, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to get through this, And, that kind of shock to your system, at first for me, I know in my first few years, there was a meanness came out of me. There was an anger inside that resulted in some meanness. But at the end, the meanness didn't solve anything or reduce my pain. And so on the other side of it, I realized, you know what? I need to reframe this, and I need to make choices and make the decision that I wasted 5 years of not being true to myself. Right? I was being I was trying to control the truth with the version I thought I should be, which was strong and powerful and decisive. And really, I wasn't feeling strong or powerful or decisive. So at the end of the 5 years, when I turned and looked at myself, and I thought, I don't really like who people see me as. That's not who I am. And so I started to reframe myself. And it took a little while for me to just relinquish all of that control. But that helped me in the future when I had things things are utterly not in your control ever. We do our best to control our environment, but they are not in our control. And I had no control over this diagnosis and no control over the pregnancies, and for certainly was completely out of control of being pregnant. And that relinquishing of that control, and eventually just saying, okay, let's see what gets thrown at me. Let's ride this roller coaster. Let's imagine myself on I don't know if this is a popular thing in Europe, but whitewater rafting, right? So it's very popular in Canada to get on a rubber tube and go down a very fast river. And people do that by choice. And actually, that's what my life is like. So I'm going to do it. Woohoo! And that's where it came from. So that's how you end up just rolling with it. Okay, roller coaster's up high. I'm going to take it, and I'm going to go down, and I'm going to scream, and I'm going to have fun. And it might really suck in the first drop, but on the other side of it, it's going to be okay. And life is like that. That's when the when we had Duncan in the hospital, his head was growing. And there was this big concern, why is his head growing? And so in Canada, we have an agency that investigates child abuse. And the agency was called in to make sure that this wasn't a case of child abuse because they didn't have a definition at that point. Why is his head swelling up? Is it shaken baby syndrome? And turned out, obviously it wasn't. But that was very, very stressful. We slept on the floor of the hospital room because they wouldn't let us take him home for a week. And my husband was really stressed out about it. Understandably, he was offended by the investigation. But then I said, you know what? They have to. Just think about this. That what if they didn't? What if they didn't investigate every child that had an injury, and one child slipped through, and they sent that child home with his parents, and his parents shook him again? So we have to ride it. It was not easy. That was a hard week. But then on the other side of it, we went home with him. We had a genetic investigation, and it saved my life. So I kind of live on that lane. Okay, I'm going through something. Can I say shitty?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I went through something super shitty, but on the other side of it was awesome. There's incredibleness on the other side of everything. And I have a friend at work. Sorry, I hit my mic. I have a friend at work here who is going through a really, really tough time. And she came to see me and she said, I can't even handle this. And I said, okay, how many times have you been in a really, really terrible place? Like, oh, way too many times. I'm like, okay, have you ever come out on the other side of it in a worse place? And she's like, no. I'm like, so it's going to get better. It's stupid to say. And I hate that phrase. Everything happens for a reason. But in the end, it happened. And now you'll figure out how to get around it next time. So if that's the stupid reason, that's the stupid reason. But you'll be better on the other side. So I don't let things stress me out the way they used to. And certainly, like, things happened when I was at school in Europe, and that I'm not happy with the way I reacted. And now I'm freeze that. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be in control of my curly hair. I'm going to be
some things you can control, like your hair. And even then,
not so much. No, you have to. Yes, I do. I know this about myself. When people start to freak out around me, I can be really annoying because I'm all sunshine and unicorns, rainbows and happiness, silver linings. But that's how I choose to live my life. And choosing to live your life from a stance of happiness and the spirit of service is the greatest choice you can make, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I would love to know if you consciously and how you communicate that to your boys.
Well, my older boy is very much me. And so he's been easy peasy. He's kind. He's gentle. We actually used to recite this as a child. Every day before he went to school, we would hold hands and we'd go, helpful, gentle, kind. Everything you do must be helpful, gentle, and kind. And one of the reasons we did that was, at the time, I wasn't really aware of all the reasons I did that. But one of the reasons we did that was he was an enormous child and would pick up his classmates and carry them around. And but then teaching him to move towards a spirit of service was fundamental in my parenting for that older boy. The younger boy is only 4.5, so I don't have the perspective yet on whether I'm being effective. I do have that blessing of having the big gap and knowing that it worked the first time. So the younger boy is more prone to outburst and stomping his foot and being in charge. And he's going to make an awesome, awesome adult and a really testy child.
Yes, I know some people who are like that. And I often think of you. I often think of that phrase that you've said to me before. Oh my God, they're going to be the most amazing adults.
So that's this guy. And I'm working so hard with him to stop. And I hear it from his teachers. We don't see it so much in our interactions with him, but we do see on the playground once in a while. But his teachers say, oh, he's really considerate and he's really careful with his friends. And so hopefully we'll go that way. But that's really, you have to cultivate it, right? And you can't, leading by example is the only form of leadership. And if you want to lead your children into a positive, happy life of service, then you lead by example, being positive and happy and serving.
Yes. And also showing them that it's possible to hold your own space and have your own loving limits that mean that you are the only way that you can be kind and gentle and of service is when you are okay. And you're not going to be okay if you've got people mowing your lawn all the time and getting up in your face. And, if you can find that kind, loving, and gentle way of saying, this is me, this is where I begin and end, and you're out, sort of out there. Boundaries are a thing that we play with a lot. And I know I'm a great talker about all the things. I'm a great talker about all the things. But in practice, I, like Duncan, am a bit of a foot stomper and reactive in ways that I would not have expected of myself as a mother. Like you, childbearing hips, totally naturally made to be a mother. This is going to be an easy ride. I know what this is like. I know how I wish that I had been parented, keep all the good stuff and then bring in all this other stuff to make it even better. And oh my gosh, the lip service is easy. The practice, I find very complicated often. And messy, because we have this preconceived notion. And I think, I'm the first to stand up and say, yeah, I think that I still think, even though I know in my head and my heart it's not true, I still think to some degree that I can control things. But I can't. But oh my goodness, the amount of energy that I waste trying to control things and relationships between my girls and how they feel about certain situations and they react. It's such an outpouring of energy that would be so much better used in kindness and gentleness and service. Yeah. So thank you for that reminder.
Well, I think to bring it around to so I'm a seamstress, and I don't seamstress for business, but I seamstress for love and service. And when you and I were speaking about a really beautiful red dress that somebody wanted, and we talked about, what dress she wanted, what she wanted to do with it, what kind of spirit she wanted to be. And you said, I want her to be able to twirl in this dress. I imagine she's going to twirl in this dress.
She so has twirled in that dress.
You sent me a video. It's incredible. Mm-hmm. But to twirl in a dress, there's two options, right? You can work so hard with fabric to make it twirlable, or you can find fabric that works to twirl. And that's what I find with, if I apply that to the child environment, you have my child who is demonstrative. Do I try to control him and turn him into that gentle child? That I don't think that's going to happen. It's not going to be comfortable for anybody. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of work to get that way. Or do I allow him to be demonstrative and figure out how to channel that demonstrativeness into service? So he's, if Raleigh is the one that will sit with the elderly people and hold their hands and talk to them about, what it was like, Duncan is the one that will help build houses. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I think adapting to the personality in front of you is important. And I know we've talked about both our kids a lot, and that's, we both have challenging children and challenging situations. And, I was a single mom for a long time with Raleigh. I had to work full time. I didn't get to give him he was dropping him off at daycare at the school at 7 a.m. and picking him up close to 6 p.m. so that I could make enough money so that our weekends were fun. Was part of the context of my parenting. And I still managed to squeeze in helpful, gentle, kind every day. And it's, you have to adapt, right? You adapt to your children, you adapt to your situation, you adapt to your context.
I remember you saying, and this is something that I have repeated often to the girls, I was pregnant with Carolina, went home to see my mom. And so randomly you've ended up, it's not where you're from, but you've ended up living 3 blocks from where my mom lives. And maybe it's 4 now because you've moved since I saw you last.
Yeah.
And you came over with Raleigh, and you said something about, or maybe it wasn't when I was pregnant. Maybe it was when I came over with the girls when they were really small. And you said to Raleigh, "Oh, remember, we always ask before you touch." And that was like, such an important moment for me, because you were lovingly and kindly reminding him that you can't just go in and start touching other people, that people get their own space and so do you. And it's not okay for other people to come and, touch and come into your own space. And it was something that both in the words that you had spoken to him and in the way that you said it to him with such patience, and it wasn't scolding, which tends to be and I don't know why, it tends to be what comes out of me, probably because that's what I grew up listening to. Mm-hmm. But it's the knee jerk, and yours was just so patient, and it was just the two of you. It was you and Raleigh doing all the things, and there wasn't any support. You didn't have any family. You didn't have a whole lot of support otherwise. And there you were, this like patient, loving, gentle, kind mama in that moment where you could have had a stronger reaction and like grabbed his hand away, or you could have like scolded him, or you could have made him feel wrong for whatever the thing was that he was doing, the way he was touching, the way he was reaching, etc. And you didn't. You just chose something different. And that is something that we've never talked about this, but it's really a moment that has stuck with me many times, and I could do to remember it right now because we're in some pretty hot, intense moments at the moment.
Oh, puberty sucks, man.
Oh, and it's a double header. It's like one is in early puberty and the other one is in like kind of just rightly timed puberty. It's like bam, bam, both at the same time. And I'm looking at them going, oh my God, I totally remember. And I'm thinking, do you think of me like I thought of my mom at the time? Like, do I look that old?
Do you call your mom and apologize?
We'll have a, no. I don't call her and apologize because I'm
sorry.
Going this summer and we can have some conversations, but it's more just seeing that amazing wheel turn of I don't feel like I was an adolescent that long ago. Like I look at myself in the mirror and I don't think I look that old. And I certainly know that when I was my daughter's age, looking at my mother, she was a dinosaur. Like, do you know and now I look back at pictures of her at my age and I think she takes my breath away. She was so beautiful. And yet my vision of her from really young, sort of nubile perfection, looking at my mom with her body that had borne 2 babies and had, spent a lot of time sitting in an office chair, and she ran every day and like she took really beautiful care of herself. But my perception of her at the time was one that I hope my kids have a different one.
Yeah. And I think it's a normal stage for you to start to define yourself in opposition to your parent.
Yeah.
Right? So if you see yourself as pretty, then you're not going to see your parents as pretty. I think that's a natural inclination. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I've tried to avoid with Raleigh, so I don't try to control him, but he knows I'm not as cool as he is, right? Like he knows that. But I try to find the things that I can be cool with him, and we both love music. So Thursday night, we're going to go to the Foo Fighters concert, right?
Awesome.
So that's something where I can have a good relationship with him, being cool. I don't know football. This kid plays football like 5 nights a week and works out and does like his thing. And by football, I mean like
American football.
Canadian football. But that's what he has in common with my husband. That he and my husband talk football, but we're not cool at everything. We just do our best. And I think because I'm aware of his need to define an opposition, maybe you can contrive what it is that he's going to define an opposition to. So. I left my water bottle somewhere. Okay.
I share my giant.
I saw you drink your water. I'm like, I want some too.
Yeah.
But one of the things when you talk about that moment when I said to Raleigh, we always ask before we touch, it comes to my regular usage when I'm coaching people, and I do a lot of. There's coaching in my current job a lot. I've got there's 30 staff here, all finding their way, and I learned in some strong coaching sessions years ago that you can't coach somebody who's not ready to be coached.
Yeah.
So the same way you can't order a child to do something if they're not ready to be ordered. But if you ask them permission to teach them how to do something, you get further always. If they don't want to be taught, then there's no point in forcing yourself upon them. And in the staff situation, you say, hey, I noticed you do something. Is there something is this something you're open to me maybe giving you some advice on? And if they say yes, then go to town. And if they say no, then you say, fine, then figure it out. And you can walk away. And in parenting, it works the same way. I'm a much better manager. A, I think because I'm older and a little bit more laid back, but two, because I stop and ask, are you ready to be coached? Are you open to that? Do you need me? Do you want me? If you don't want me, then figure it out. And if you have your job in 3 weeks, then
good on you.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. It all comes from recognizing the individual in your approach, right? So you've got 2 very different children, and one of them you have to acknowledge that you're dealing with one at a time.
Yeah,
which I do. I have 2 very different children.
Yeah, totally. And I the story I make up in my head. This is a very useful phrase that one of my yoga teachers said to me once when I was at a teacher training. She said to all of us, she said, we all have these stories that we make up in our own heads. And so, and then we start believing them. So the story that I make up is that when your kids are so far apart in age, because they're at such different phases, I would imagine that it may be easier to see them as at different phases. Whereas when they're so close, they're not even 2 years apart. And the little one, if she could go first in all the things, she would go first in all the things. So it's hard sometimes to disentangle the two because they're so close in age. They're also both girls. You have 2 boys, so there's a similarity there. But they go through things simultaneously in some cases. And it's hard to the older one is absolutely the oldest and will always be the oldest. But there is this, in some things, the little one is stronger and the bigger one is stronger in others. And it's a real enmeshment. And what you were just saying about recognizing that you're working with an individual is sometimes really tricky. I would imagine that parents of multiples have a similar or even more pronounced situation where you have 2 or 3 or more who are all at the same age, if not same exact developmental phase, because obviously people progress in different areas at different times. But yeah, it's a bit of a head twister. Well,
I think maybe something to hold as I'm really just thinking of this right now, but if you is a plural, then you has its problems. If you is a singular, then you can identify what's in front of you as a single, right? So maybe that's a trick. I'll have to watch it when I'm in my team meetings and talking to groups of people, see what happens. So I talk about I in the singular. Why isn't you in the singular as well? Mm-hmm. We need a vous. We need a vous in English.
You do need a vous in English. Vous is the plural of tu, which is you in French. Yeah. Yeah, vous would be good. All y'all. If you head south, it's y'all.
Yeah. Not you.
You and y'all.
But maybe that's a perspective to take. So I'm always about I'm about teachable moments, right? And that's maybe we've just stumbled upon one there for me. I'll think about that.
We'll come back and tell us in the group how that's worked out for you. But it's definitely, it's such a journey, and it's one that, having had the privilege of knowing you when you were 18 and I was 17 when we first went to university, or 19. I can't remember how old you were. 19, I think.
I was 19. Yeah.
19. Yeah, I was like 3. I was 17. Much too young to be where I was and should have gone backpacking. But anyway, you can't go back and relive your life. Having had the privilege of seeing you go from, to be fair, still already an amazing seamstress that I will never, ever forget. In fact, I was looking for pictures the other day of the pink and green dress that you made for the formal.
I still have that. It's hanging in my closet.
Oh,
it was a gorgeous dress.
It was a gorgeous, gorgeous dress. In fact,
hours of labor.
If you have a picture of that dress, I would love to put it literally in the show notes, because it's just such an exquisite creation. It's so beautiful. And that was kind of one of the first introductions to you of what is capable, what is possible if you put your mind to it, and you have this pursuit of beauty that you've always had of creating these amazing clothes that bring such joy and are so breathtaking. And my daughter's always saying, "Can you teach me how to sew? Can you teach me how to sew?" And those are moments when I think, God, I wish I lived near Heather. I wish, because I can, but it's like, okay, you take a pattern and let's put it on the fabric, and which way does the arrow go? And it's not the lifelong passion of being able to feel the fabric, and how you were saying, choose something, choose a fabric that's going to twirl because it's in its nature, and choose situations where your kids are going to thrive because it's in their nature. It's not that at all. It's like, let's go and ask the people at the store which way this might twirl.
But maybe that's part of it too, is I've immersed myself in that knowledge. And so I know about that stuff. So that maybe that's what it is. We all pursue knowledge. If you pursue knowledge about fabric, then you would know about fabric. You pursue knowledge about, I know that you're very, very cognizant of your yoga practice. And so you know far more about the body and yoga and than I do. And I know more about fabric. So yeah.
So you can make knowledge within my clothes.
What's that?
Make some great yoga clothes together.
I do make great yoga clothes. Yeah.
I bet you do. So if you could go back and say something to Heather, who was on miscarriage number 6, what would you say to her?
Oh, that person? I don't know. If she needed any knowledge at that point. I think she needed to get through stuff. Miscarriage number 6 was about 2002, I guess. And I was 30 years old. And I guess I would only give advice that would help her get through the tough marriage bits. But the rest of it, what it is. If I could go back to 16, 17, 18 and had an opportunity to tell that person, it would be helpful, gentle, kind. But by 30, I was there. Maybe I would tell myself to be healthier.
If yesterday Heather was healthier, then today Heather might not have had to work so hard to get into the amazing shape that she's in.
Yeah.
So where today you obviously have a life that doesn't look anything like it looked a year ago and nothing like it looked 10 years ago. Where do you get your MamaFuel now?
I have this really great relationship with, this is bizarre, okay, and it sounds like a cop-out to me a little bit, because I haven't completely accepted it. But one, my 15-year-old lives on his phone anyways. Teenagers do, right? And so I actually have a really good connection with my 15-year-old because I'm not with him in person. So I'm using the phone, and I'm using text messaging, and using Instagram direct messages. I haven't really quite delved into Snapchat yet, but I know I'm so uncool, but I think it would freak him out if I got that cool. So that I'm actually parenting my child like an adult. My goal is when he leaves my house, which is not that far away, he can get on a bus and he can find his way to Timbuktu and get back again and buy himself his groceries, and if he needs to, get himself to a doctor and the dentist, and how to take care of himself, all those things. I used to get him to give me directions home. How do you get home from here, buddy? And I would let him direct me home. We took some crazy trips, but eventually got it. And then for my little guy, we have, his dad's amazing. So the only way that I can do what I do now is because my Chuck is amazing. He's an amazing father. He's an amazing parent. He's an amazing partner. And so he is permitting me, not because he's given me permission, but he's enabling me to have this opportunity that I have right now, which is really fun and cool and awesome. And that little guy is getting parented really, really well. And I am, every morning I'm in a video chat with him. And every night I'm on the phone with them while they read their goodnight story. Mm-hmm. So I have my time, with him in the morning, and very often I'm doing this with the camera. Okay, eat your cereal, take a bite. All right, and then once he's
hiding the camera, unhiding, yeah.
You don't get to see me if you're not eating. But with the evening story, it's a good night little bit. And then I get a couple minutes on the phone with my husband, and we both crash and fall asleep because we're both exhausted. So, I don't know, that's part of it. And then the time that I'm at home, which is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it's intense family time. It's cuddles and loving. And in fact, I think I am a better parent in total because of the extra hugs and cuddles that I get in on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Right? So that's it. And I'm just I've been in this job now for, 4 months. And so now I'm just starting, okay, how do I fit all my other things back in again? How do I find sewing time? How do I find time to get a workout in? How do I get a walk in? How do I, my nutrition is always easy for me, but the rest of it is the challenge. So
yeah, the other parts of fuel, and I think you've just named something that's really important, is that nothing is steady state, right? So that you have your MamaFuel that comes from the nutrition you choose, from the walks you take, from the sewing, which is like your therapy time, I would imagine, all the cuddles and snuggles and love and the bedtime stories and so on. But it's about titrating those things within the context of your actual life, not some fantasy life. Because when we, and I'm very good at this, I'm very good at creating these amazing fantasies of all this stuff that's going to happen, and we're going to be able to do all these things and take care of ourselves in all these ways. And then real life happens, and it can start to feel like a series of disappointments, but it isn't. It's just life that we have imagined in a way that is so unrealistic and sustainable that we feel let down. But when we find little tiny ways of fueling ourselves, they accumulate, like you said, about those extra hugs you get on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's extra, and it just kind of fills you up.
Yeah. And what makes the roller coaster so much fun when you're on the roller coaster is not knowing what's next.
Yes.
And if you're spending all your time planning where the roller coaster should be going, you're going to be disappointed, because the roller coaster is not going to do what you planned. The roller coaster is going to do what the roller coaster does. And if you're trying to control gravity, like, how fun are those roller coasters that have brakes on the down? There's no fun in that.
No.
So yeah, just ride the roller coaster.
Yes.
Ride it. See what happens. Take that crazy river. Do the whitewater rafting. And
enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride. Well, that feels like
so contextual.
I know, right? So contextual in front of your motorcycles. That feels like such a great place to thank you so much for being my guest today on MamaFuel and sharing your twisty, turny, bumpy, beautiful life ride so far and your journey into motherhood. And I thank you for that reminder about not trying to control the roller coaster, because we have this, as I said, I'm a card-carrying member of the Try to Control Too Many Things group. And it's true. If you try to put the brakes on the roller coaster, it's not going to get up the damn hill, and it's no fun. It's just no fun. So enjoy the ride for all its ups and downs. I have so enjoyed the ride so far with you, and I look forward to another 30 plus years of friendship. I love you. I cannot wait to hug you.
I'm looking forward to it too, Anne.
See you soon. Bye, Dudley.
Bye.
That's it for today's episode of MamaFuel, the podcast. Thanks for listening. There's a lot more conversation, sharing, and real mama talk happening in our private Facebook group. To join us, go to www.thecenteredmamaproject.com/Facebook and make sure you say hi when you get there. If you like this episode, or if you know a mama who could use a little mama fuel, I'd love you to share this episode and to rate and leave a review. Every comment helps, and it is always a delight to hear from you. Thanks, and bye for now.